So we've covered the four aspects of repair. Now let's cover the four different systems in the sewing machine. Okay. System number one is the needle bar system. System number two is the presser foot system. Number three is the hook system, and four is the feed system. Okay. Now in the needle bar system, you basically have only two adjustments. You have the adjustment of the needle bar in terms of height and rotation. In the presser foot system, you only have height and rotation of the presser bar. The hook system has a few more settings, and we'll cover that. And then the feed system has about 4 settings. So next we'll move into the 4 different systems, and we will cover the settings and how they relate to one another. Now we've covered the needle bar, the presser foot, and the hook. Now we're going to move into the feed system. The feed system, in a way, is, I think, the most important system. All the other settings obviously are important so a machine doesn't skip stitches and break thread. But the feed system is the most overlooked part of a sewing machine. In every service manual I've looked at and training that I've had, very few books really spend a lot of time on the feed system. And you've all heard of feed timing, or if you're new, that's a word for you, feed timing. It is the relationship when the fabric is being pulled, and that is really what finalizes the formation of the stitch. Now I've altered the feeding of this sewing machine, and I'm hoping it shows up on the DVD. When a feed system works or is in process of pulling, you have 2 cams in a sewing machine that affect the feeding. The first cam is responsible for simply the throw of the feed dogs in terms of how far they move in the plate from front to back. The other cam is responsible for raising and lowering the feed teeth, and these 2 feed cams work in unison to provide a smooth movement of the feed dogs. Now, what is that movement? The movement says that as the machine is rotating, the feed dogs come to their highest position in the front. Then as they move backwards towards the back of the machine, they stay high to pull the material until they reach the back of their throw, and then they start to descend. Okay? Now the rule of thumb for feed timing is that the teeth of the feed dogs should be at the level of the needle plate as the tip of the needle is entering the needle plate. Okay, so that way, just with a quick visual, you'll know if your needle and your feed timing are in unison with one another. Now on this machine, I have set it so that the feed dogs are falling far too soon. So as I rotate this hand wheel, if you or I can pick up the teeth of the feed dog, you'll see that they're up in the front right now, but as they start to go backwards, they are falling. Okay, so that is one thing you have to train your eye on. If you can see that, I'm going to move that back and forth. You can see that at the front, they're up. When I move backwards, they're already level with the needle plate before the needle is anywhere close to the plate. Okay, so that's incorrect. All right, then the other thing is the forward feed of the feed dog. When I take the stitch length and I turn it to the longest stitch length on the sewing machine, the feed teeth have to come as far forward in this slot as is possible. But you'll notice I've done that. It's on the longest setting right now. And look at all the space I have to the front edge of that hole to where these teeth are. On the longest setting, these teeth should be much, much further forward. Now what happens when that's not is you have a sewing machine that will not pull in a thick seam. You have somebody who's sewing denim and they come up to a thick seam and the machine literally stalls. Okay, that's because these feed teeth are not reaching far forward enough under the presser foot to reach and grab the fabric and pull it into the sewing machine. With the cam in the improper setting and it falling too soon, I don't get the right stitch length. So on this model, if this was sewing and came into your shop, the customer would be complaining about the fact that she has to put her dial on like 5 to get an average stitch length. And the whole problem here is that the 2 cams are just not, well actually 1 cam right now is incorrect. And the adjustment from here to the front is actually not a cam, and I'll show you that in a minute. But it's a different setting on a shaft. But anyway, the thing about the feeding, can't stress this enough, is that it must come up as high as it can. Well, about 1 millimeter off the plate is the setting for all feed dogs. It comes up 1 millimeter, then it rotates back, reaches its far extreme back, and then falls. Okay, now we're going to talk about tension. one last thing on tension. You must do the pull test on every single sewing machine you fix. You have to put the foot down. You have to pull on the thread through the needle, feel the needle bow, pull on the bobbin thread every single machine, every single time. You cannot get away from that, because that is how you know when you fix a sewing machine that your tensions are in the right range, so that you know your other adjustments are the problem. If you use thread tension to compensate the stitch, to cover up other setting problems, that is just a terrible way to end your sewing machine repair. You spend all your time on your adjustments. Now watch, you get all your adjustments good, you do your pull test, and you pull it and you go, yep, that's in the right range. That bobbin tension's in the right range. And then you put it together and you sew with it, and the stitch is ugly as can be. You know it's not your tensions. So when you look at the stitch, it's like, oh, it looks like I should tighten this and tighten this. That is the worst way to finalize your repair. So don't get trapped into just cranking on your tensions to pull the stitch into line, because it's your adjustments that will be out of line if your tensions are correct. Let that play over in your head a million times, and let that evolve from you onto your workbench, and your machines will leave with beautiful stitching, I promise.